Welcome to Study Session 12, Problems Facing Guidance and Counseling in Nigeria. Introduction. This study session will focus on the major problems facing guidance and counseling in our schools today, providing solutions to the aforementioned problems and the essential need for guidance and counseling in Nigeria today. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Describe the major problems facing guidance and counseling in our schools today. 2. Highlight some solutions to the aforementioned problems. 3. Discuss the essential need for guidance and counseling in Nigeria today. Problems facing guidance and counseling in Nigeria. Many of the problems facing guidance and counseling services in our schools today are as well problems facing the school counselor because of the central position which he occupies in the school guidance program. Some of these problems are identified and discussed as follows. 1. Shortage and uneven distribution of personnel. 2. Resistance from the principal or staff. 3. Office accommodation. 4. Timetable problem. 5. Lack of fund. 6. Unstable government policy. 1. Shortage and uneven distribution of personnel. Lack of enough and uneven distribution of personnel is one of the major problems facing guidance and counseling services in the country today. Not all post-primary institutions in Nigeria can boast of having a full-time counselor to cope with the large number of youngsters who require help in the various areas of their development. If the statistics were to be taken, we could probably rightly assume that secondary schools having a practicing guidance counselor in this country at the moment cannot be more than 3%. Some schools that do have 1 or 2 counselors overload them to the extent that they lose their effectiveness. Other schools make them to teach or combine teaching with their job, hence making them ineffective in the school guidance program. The situation in our schools reveals that it has been so difficult to meet the recommendation ratio of counselors to students, which is 1 to 200 as recommended by the American Personal Guidance Association. What we can now have is probably 1 or 2 counselors in a few cases to a school of about 1,000 students. This obviously will be too much for the counselor to cope with. It was projected in 1982-1983 that Nigeria would need about 18,000 counselors for the junior secondary school enrollment of about 1.6 million with a moderate counselor-student ratio of 1 to 1,000. This projection has important implications for the training of counselors and proper organization of guidance and counseling services in our schools. There are, however, no doubt that the figure we have at present is a far cry from the envisaged figure of 18,000, even when the new 633 system of education has taken off in most states of the Federation, and if we go at this rate, Nigeria may not be able to reach the target by the year 2020 and beyond. 2. Resistance from principal or the staff. One of the greatest problems the counselor may face in the school setting is that of resistance from the principal or other staff. Olaoshibikon 1980 hinted that about 85% of students counselors in training reported that the principals and teachers constituted the most formidable obstacle to the counseling and the introduction of guidance and counseling services into the school. It was terrible, disheartening and demoralizing when one observed the expression on the faces of many principals then when students counselors were posted to their schools for practicum. To them, teaching of English, mathematics or social studies was more important than the other problems and total development of the students. The attitude was prevalent among secondary school principals in the late 1970s and early 80s. Today the intensity has gone down, but it still occurs in a subtle manner among secondary school principals. This attitude has been attributed to the skeptical perception of the principal and the staff as to the efficacy of guidance and counseling services and mere jealousy of the school counselor. Up to today, most teachers feel they perform a function similar to that of the school counselor. In some cases, They believe they could even do it better. Hence, they feel that their powers are being eroded by the school counselor. In this situation, they may refuse to cooperate with school counselor. Some staff members, especially female members, may be curious to know and even take note of students who visit the counselor's office and occasionally question them about their visits. This is against confidentiality, an important ethical issue for the counselor. The relationship between male counselor and female client or students may be viewed with suspicion by teachers. Hence, the counselor is usually given many ridiculous names: controller of ladies, wicked and poisonous counselor, powerful counselor, chairman of beautiful ladies, and so on, thus exposing him to serious embarrassment by staff. This attitude may constitute a hindrance to the effectiveness of the school counselor in the school guidance program. 3. Office accommodation. Most schools where counselor exists do not have a standard and suitable office that would stand the test of his profession. This is a big problem for the counselor who finds himself in this situation. The counselor, as discussed earlier, needs a separate, well-equipped personal office because of the nature of his job. He uses certain valuable materials which must be housed and protected. Without any office, therefore, performing his duties as expected of him becomes very inconvenient. 4. Timetable problem. Most of the secondary schools in Nigeria do not have time, even a period, for guidance and counseling on their timetable. This is to say that the school timetable is so crowded and rigid that students hardly find time during the school period to discuss their problems with the school counselor. Many school programs are so tight during the week that the students are in a confusing position of trying to decide whether to see the school counselor or miss any of the controversial subject class and receive a severe reprimand from the mathematics teacher or forgo visiting the counselor. The counselor's problem here is that he may become bored or feel so redundant or appear not to be useful to other members of staff. 5. Lack of fund. One of the problems that the counselor might likely face in the school is that of no budgetary allocation or a poor one to his office as a result of lack of fund. Also, some of the materials to be used by the school counselor, as mentioned earlier on in this book, might be too expensive for the school to afford. As a result of this, the counselor might operate without the necessary materials. This would be too painful and unethical. Unstable government policy. Unstable government policies affect to a large extent a number of things in our school. The school guidance program is not an exception. Some policies are on paper only and never practiced or given the necessary follow-up if properly implemented. This sometimes poses a number of problems for the counselor and the school guidance program. Suggested solutions to these problems. Many solutions could be suggested to alleviate the problems highlighted above. Some of the possible suggestions are summarized below. 1. Lack of enough and uneven distribution of personnel. A. There should be mass production of counselors. This will help a lot in this regard. A way of doing this is for the federal government to give directives to all universities and colleges of education to increase their intake for would-be counselors. This will help in no small way in the new universal basic education. B. The present number of counselors available should be well spread. No two counselors should be in a school, whatever the size of the school, at least for now. This will ensure equitable distribution of the few numbers available. 2. Resistance on the part of the principal and other staff. A. The counselor should be methodical, understanding, and diplomatic in his dealings with the principal and other members of staff. B. He should involve the school authorities in his plan. C. Educate staff as to what are his roles and functions in the school system. D. Show some results which would assure the school authorities of his competence. E. Should seek to convince others of his efficacy rather than expect them to readily embrace his concept and practice without questions. F. He should not emphasize the point that he is an expert in human behavior and behavior influence. His role must be seen as one of the possible specialists like others in the school. G. Should put aside everything that might make his role look privileged or so important to the other members of staff. 3. Inaccessibility of psychological tests. It is suggested that most of the locally constructed tests that are not yet published should be published without any further delay. B. Federal government should endeavor to produce some of these tests free of charge to schools so as to be easily available for use in the universal basic education now in operation. C. Efforts should be made by the Counseling Association of Nigeria, CASN, to look into the psychometric properties of some of the tests before publication. 4. Office accommodation. Any counselor operating in the school should be given a befitting office. The counselor should not be given a staff common room as an office. B. He will not be able to function well in this situation. At the same time, the counselor should be able to improvise pending the times things will be okay. 5. Timetable. A. School authorities, as a matter of urgency, should give time to guidance and counseling on the school timetable. B. Break hours should not be used for counseling, as this may rob the students for the period of relaxation. C. The idea of asking clients to wait after school hours for counseling should be discouraged. This is liable to various interpretations and temptations. D. Free period or library period could as well be used in some cases. 6. Lack of fund. A. Adequate budgetary allocation must be made by the principal in the school budget for guidance and counseling unit. B. Government should try and provide fund to counseling as a matter of priority. 7. Unstable government policy. A. Successive governments should not abandon tasks already embarked upon by their predecessors, especially when it has to do with the total development of an individual. B. Efforts should also be made to follow up policies after they have been stated on papers. C. The right people who know more about things being discussed should be put in charge for necessary implementation and success. The need for guidance and counseling in Nigeria today. Some observers have criticized the introduction of guidance and counseling into our schools and also the training of school counselors. They buttress their argument with some of the likely problems facing guidance and counseling highlighted earlier. The protagonists, however, maintain that there are enough reasons for the need for guidance and counseling and hence the training of counselors for our schools. The increasing number of students entering our schools today is an important factor to reckon with. Students of various uniqueness are brought together for training in the same classroom. These students have differences in background, interest, mood, and taste, and these deeply affect learning. In an attempt to provide the same education for all students in the face of marked differences that exist among them, there is bound to be problems of various dimensions. The schools therefore need guidance and counseling services, hence the training of school counselors becomes inevitable. The counselors will help in providing a learning situation within the school for the individual group to develop and acquire problem-solving skills. It was further added that certain conditions in Nigeria today call for guidance and counseling. For example, the rapid rate of industrialization, urbanization accompanied by various societal vices which may affect students' outlook to life and their general behaviors are some of the critical points mentioned. Increased areas of specialization of avenues of employment and opportunities which create choice problems, as the choice point is another case in point. Another point to be considered is the fact that the large numbers of students population in our schools today are adolescents whose needs are wide and varied. We therefore need guidance and counseling to assist the adolescents to clarify their goals and values, strengths, interests, and aspirations, appreciate their philosophies and cognition, and get adjusted to the norms of the society. The federal government's National Policy on Education 1981 gave legal support to establishment of guidance and counseling, and the presently operated universal basic system of education calls seriously for the need for guidance and counseling in this country, as it has an important role to play in the system. Summary of study session. In study session 12, you have learned that 1. Many of the problems facing guidance and counseling services in our schools today are as well problems facing the school counselor because of the central position which he occupies in the school guidance program. Some of the problems are identified and discussed as follows: shortage and uneven distribution of personnel, resistance from the principal or staff, office accommodation, timetable problem, lack of funds, and unstable government policy. The school therefore needs guidance and counseling services, hence the training of school counselors becomes inevitable. The counselors will help in providing a learning situation within the school for the individual group to develop and acquire problem-solving skills. We have come to the end of GCE 105. Thank you.